Join us at Denver Community Media every fall for Harvest Your Creativity, a month-long celebration where we offer free, hands-on media workshops and events designed to help you learn new skills, meet other creatives, and just hit record.
Hi, everybody. We are live down here at Denver Community Media. My name is Heather Dalton, and I'll be doing a presentation today on covering your assets. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. And we are good to go. All right. So covering your assets, what does that mean? So when we craft any media project, navigating the digital rights usage can feel like the Wild West. And we know it's incredibly hard to know where to start and how to ensure that you are not vulnerable to any future legal actions or disputes. There is a wealth of resources available to you online within the Creative Commons or the public domain, which we'll explore in a little while, to help elevate your productions with visuals, audio, and more. So in this, we're going to get some tips and tricks on how to add to the public domain into your toolkit, as well as crafting releases to protect you in perpetuity. And we'll explain what that means in a little while as well. And also explore creative ways to approach productions when we don't have access to the licensed items we desperately want. We'll also explore multi-platform usage and how pre-production can save time, money, and energy. And I'm going to keep an eye out. Please feel free to ask any questions as we go through, but a little bit on my background. Who am I? I have been involved with Denver media for over 30 years. Most of that focus has been in public and civic media. And my career started with a local PBS affiliate. I'm passionate about local art, music, and literature, and preserving the rich and dynamic history of our fair city. A few notable projects. I was the director, editor, public assistant. I did everything. There's a documentary called Neil Cassidy, The Denver Years. Executive producer of music and variety series Sounds on 29th. Travel series Street Level Denver Sessions, and Mile High Mixtape for Denver ATV currently. I have held every title from tape librarian, production assistant, editor, shooter, producer, and director, and I've been incredibly grateful for each and every experience. Currently, I'm a multi-platform producer for the city and county of Denver, which is fun because I get to tell a lot of wonderful stories about our Denver residents. And having worked for a very small television station that had more heart than resources, one thing I truly know is how to be creative when there is no budget available. And I assume a lot of us are starting out that way. So let's jump in. I know that this isn't sexy or fun, but permits, paperwork, and planning ahead really will push your projects forward. It will ensure that they get to the finish line. I've seen way too many projects get stopped because the T's weren't crossed and the I's weren't dotted. And it's a shame because we want to share all that hard work with the world, right? So planning ahead will save you time, frustration, and money. So do you need a permit? Nothing can kill your vision than not getting the proper permits and approvals in place. So are you doing a scripted piece? Are you doing documentary style? That could really change what you need to get. And you don't want the popo calls to shut down your shoot. So you may need a permit to film in Denver, depending on the location and nature of your shoot. On public property, you may need a film permit if you are filming such as parks, streets, sideways, and alleys. You may need a permit if your production involves more than 5 people, uses equipment and other handheld cameras, or impacts pedestrian and vehicular traffic. You may also need a permit if you want to use public parking, use a generator, pyrotechnics. If you're depicting violence or crime, you need to be aware of triggering other people and letting the proper people know that it is not in reality happening. Or if you need to close down a public space. You can find more information about permits on the denvergov.org website, and we will walk through that here in a second. Union Station definitely requires a lot. You need to submit a certificate of liability insurance at least 5 days before filming, and you need prior approval. Colorado Parks and Wildlife requires similar permits, kind of the same criterion that is for filming in Denver at parks. You just need to express what your production is going to look like. And we'll go take a quick look-see at that right now. So this is great at denverfilm.org or denvergov.org/film. A lot of outlines to help you through the process. And a lot of our independent crews are not going to be this large, right? We haven't really retained that kind of a budget yet. So this doesn't really apply until things start really kind of kicking up for the production. You get a lot of support behind it. It's fully funded. Make sure you're just doing the proper things to show goodwill for the city, for the people that you're working with, and you can kind of go from there. Here's a whole bunch of different help, rules and regulations, insurance requirements, costs and fees. So make sure that this is in your arsenal. Like I said, typically with small independent productions, a lot of this isn't going to be relevant, but we can make sure that that's applicable. All right, so moving on a little bit. Rights of way and using other types of media for licensing. Rights laws and permissions are rapidly changing and the ground is always shifting. So you constantly have to keep aware of changing laws and requirements. There are some dangerous myths that exist out there and they can lull us into a false sense of security. I used to believe this and I used to operate on this myth that if you alter something at least 3 times, it's considered artistic interpretation and you're covered on infringement. I used to do that a lot, thinking that I was covered until one of the most recognizable images in the 20th century was challenged. I'm sure we've all seen this, the AP photo that was the inspiration for the Obama Hope campaign photo, or poster rather. Ferry. AP's work with a form of computerized paint by number, and Ferry maintained that he transferred the image enough to constitute a fair use of the work under copyright law. That was incredibly contentious, and the case, after a long period, was finally settled, and Ferry had to share his rights with the AP, and undisclosed financial terms were met. So don't think that just because you alter things, it's going to protect you. I'm going to stop and see, do we have any questions? No. So I will continue on. If at any time there are any questions, please let me know. Okay. Music is definitely an interesting one when it comes to documentaries. Let's say I'm filming at a location and music is playing in the background. Certain things can protect us if you are using editorially appropriate sound and video bites to illustrate a bona fide news story or a illustrated with the Obama picture. Shepard Fairey tried to say that that was fair use, and it was found it was not. If something is really a conundrum for you, I would consult legal counsel if possible. I know that's hard on small budgets, but you really want to protect your project at all costs and don't make sure that you're vulnerable in certain areas. So let's say you are filming for a documentary and a song is playing in the background. You will still likely need to pay for song rights if you want to use that music in your video. You'll also need to get permission from the copyright owner, which is usually the publisher or the record label. And you'll need to get sync rights or sync license from the publisher as well. Once again, if you can show that your use of music was incidental, let's say a fight broke out at a rally and there was a popular song playing in the background and you were documenting everything, you may have a case that you are not violating copyright, that you are covering the incidents as it occurs. And factors that can help determine if your use was incidental include how much of the song is heard and how clear it is. But once again, this is something that I would recommend retaining legal counsel for a little bit more guidance on. All right. Crafting releases. Once again, I realize that a lot of us are doing smaller independent projects, and it's always incredibly helpful to make sure that you have releases available for not only your actors, your crew people, location shoots, talent. They're going to be your best friend. They can protect you from costly legal fees that may tie up your project, and worst case scenario, put a dead stop to your project and might stop you from distribution. So a little bit of time in the beginning saves you a lot of worry and heartache at the end. There are different types of releases. I said there's a bunch of releases online and templates to help you. And the term in perpetuity means forever. That is obviously negotiable depending on the scenario, but you want to kind of include that language so you are protected for the lifespan of your project. So there's a personal release. I'm sure we're all familiar with that. That is whomever is on camera, whether you are doing a documentary, whether you're doing scripted work, it's always great to get a personal release and file that away and make sure that that's easily accessible. If the person who is being filmed is under the age of 18, you need parental consent and a release from them. So make sure that you get that as well. And I'll show some examples of releases here shortly. Location release, especially if this is a home, a private home, the exterior or the interior, you're going to want to make sure you're covered on that. Visual arts, natural audio, and music. Not a lot of people do, but it's nice if you give some recognition to a muralist on a famous mural downtown that you had just happened to be filming at, and include credit for them. And see, like I said, there's some gray area there. You don't necessarily have to get that, but it's always kind of nice to act in good faith. And then, of course, photo and image releases. This, especially if you're doing documentaries and you're building a historical archive and a story behind that narration, you want to get image releases for either an entire collection. So a family per se would have a collection that would cover all the images that were released to you, or you can get really minuscule and get one for each photo. So releases, it doesn't have to be super intense and super hardcore. Like I said, there's a lot of templates online that you can find. You can create a boilerplate for yourself or your registered production company. And make sure that your production company is properly registered, because legitimately, if you are having people sign a release for your production company and that production company is not an LLC or not organized or registered with the state of Colorado to do business as your LLC, that could put you in legal problems. So I would say if you don't have that legally registered, use your own name, because you still want that legal protection. And like I said, this doesn't need to be overly complicated. So here's an example. You can have somebody just kind of tick off the boxes. If they have any restrictions or concerns, they can let you know. You can sometimes renegotiate those. These are the different platforms that it'll be going on. It's very clear and it's easy to read. And most people get intimidated when you hand them a 5-page release form that they're afraid somewhere in there and they've just signed over their firstborn child. So make sure that you're instilling trust, that you're being transparent, and keep it pretty easy. And each one of these can be altered to fit your situation. So you could put photo release on the top, location release, personal release. So just have these at your disposal. They can kind of help everything out. So once again, I know it's not super fun, but planning and pre-production helps. Um, It's the least glamorous and exciting part of production, but it ensures that you avoid any problems and that you're giving respect to all the people involved on your project as professionals whose time and talents are highly regarded. I once again know that a lot of these are volunteer productions. Once we're starting out in the independent space, and people are there because they believe in you and they're passionate about what you're doing, and you're helping them with their projects as well. So, time is money, money is time. Even if it's being volunteered, you need to show respect and efficiency for everyone that's involved in bringing your project to fruition. So, what you want to do before you even start rolling any tape is draft a scope of work document and a budget. Now, I know a lot of us don't work with a budget. So if there is no budget, look at terms of hours donated. What are people bringing to the project for you? That still has great value, even though you're not exchanging monetary funds. So just kind of look at hours based, who's helping you, how much they've put into your project. Create a production rundown for each day of your production and distribute it accordingly. Have all those releases that we just talked about with a clipboard and pens available wherever you go. You never know what kind of fun you're going to get into and how things can change on a whim. Just always make sure that you're prepared. What has been incredibly helpful to me when you're filming in a public location and you can't necessarily disseminate information to everybody, there are hundreds of people there. What you can do is post some signage that say, please be aware that filming is in progress and you will be filmed. Any questions can be directed to yourself and the production entity. And also make sure you film that signage as well to prove that it was posted and easy to read. And then that way, if there's any concerns, you can prove that you clearly stated filming was in progress and nobody can come back on you and say that they were unaware. So here's an example of a scope of work that Denver ATV and Denver Community Media worked on last year called Denver Sessions. So we had a great collaboration, and no matter what project you're doing, how small in scope, how large in scope, this kind of really helps to put who's doing what their duties are, and very clearly stating what the chain of command is. Now, I'm sure we've all been on those shoots where something goes wrong and it's that meme of Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man. You want to avoid those kind of scenarios. So if you clearly define all the roles, have everybody sign and understand and add notes if they wanted to change anything, if they feel that something needed to be added. This once again creates that chain of command. And usually when things start going down, everything starts going wrong, and you want to keep calm, clear heads prevailing. And it helps to avoid confusion and conflict at high moments of stress, and will save you time at critical moments. So a production rundown is exactly what it sounds like. It is the schedule for the day. And this is once again an illustration of a Denver Sessions example. You want to make sure that everyone on the crew has this prior to the production date, so they are fully aware of how the date is intending to go. We all know we've been in production long enough to know that sometimes it doesn't go the way we want, as with life. So you need to be flexible. But if you have it available, everybody's kind of in sync on what needs to happen at what times. And then when you're on site, clearly post in visible areas. Now make sure that this is a realistic production schedule. Add some pad for issues that may arise. Things happen. It always happens. So don't try to be a taskmaster and just barrel through. be very realistic on how long this time will take, because I have accidentally made the mistake of trying to consolidate everything into too short of a time. I went over on budget, I went over on time, and I frustrated people. So this kind of eliminates a lot of that, and just make sure you're giving yourself grace. Uh, Always, what's very important, always, always, always plan breaks and provide craft services if you can to your hardworking crew. A little goes a long way to show your appreciation, especially if this is not a paid volunteer shoot. Just make sure that you are recognizing and respecting the people who are assisting you bring your vision to life. And one thing that is incredibly helpful, make sure that you create a cloud-based contact information page that everyone has access to. So if something's going wrong, people can stay in communication with each other without having to bother the director, associate director, anybody else, to make sure that communication is seamless and people are empowered with information. All right. So this is the fun stuff. I'm sure a lot of you already are using this, but this has really helped my career as a documentarian, and kind of helped me out when I couldn't afford a $15,000 image that I really wanted. So we're going to look at Creative Commons and the public domain, where you can harness and contribute to the creative power of the people. So the Creative Commons, if you're not familiar, it's a great resource. It is a nonprofit organization that offers licenses to copyright owners that allow others to use their work in certain ways. Creative Commons licenses allow creators to grant permission for others to share, use, and build upon their work. While still retaining their copyright and receiving credit for their work, there are multiple Creative Commons licensees, each with different requirements, but all require some acknowledgement of the original creator. So let's see, how does this work? And Lena, can you see that video?
Well, there's a bit of a delay, but we do have a question.
Oh, great. Let me check the chat real quick. Getting over there. Thank you. If covering a public event where there is no exception of privacy, am I okay? Would posting the notice in a program be sufficient if filming backs instead of faces give any protection? That is a great question, Joe Dora Webster. Thank you for asking that. That is okay technically, because if you're not showing faces and you're being very cognizant of that, you are being sensitive to people not wanting to be filmed. So I think you are covered on that. I would still, I think notice in a program is helpful, but if possible, I would still try to put signage up just to make sure you've got that added level of security, knowing that you've let everybody know that you're filming. But I think if you could definitely get into a program, that would be very helpful, and mindful of not filming any faces and blurring if needed in post. So hopefully that answers your question. And thank you so much for asking that. What a great question. I'm going to share links in the chat as we move forward, so you have those to reference. And to, if you would like, I can send you this entire presentation so you can refer to all of the links and everything going forward. So this is the Creative Commons. Basically, it kind of remixes everything. You can share your things. It also works with Wikimedia. Let me see if I can give this a share. So it's a living, breathing beast that will allow us to remix everyone's work. You can share your work within that. Now, with the Creative Commons Wikimedia, I'm sure a lot of you use this, but we can go and see if that's coming through. Is that not working?
Chrome tab should work, yeah, because we have it set up.
Okay. So
Yeah.
there we
Okay.
go. So thank you, Lena. And I thank you all for your patience as we work through these technical issues. I use Wikimedia a lot because there's a lot of Creative Commons and public domain, which we'll get into a little bit more. So I'm sure all of us have been really enthralled with pygmy hippopotamuses lately. So let's say you're doing a story on that. You want to find images, audio, video. Oh my goodness, here's a minute and 16 that we can kind of play through and look at. And there's Creative Commons attribution and share alike. So that means I can use that in my project. And I'm going to wait for this to catch up a little bit. So this outlines exactly what I need to do to share, adapt, how I need to credit it. And I can use that in my work with proper credit. And I can also, if I have video for that, upload myself. So I'm going to try to go back to the... Okay, so now we go into the public domain, which I had a lot of great tabs to share with you, but we're going to hold off on that. The public domain, works in the public domain are no longer protected by copyright and can be used by anyone without permission. So this has been really helpful in crafting visual narratives for me. You can reproduce, distribute, adapt, display, or perform the work without a license fee or permission from the creator. Works typically enter the public domain due to age. However, as you'll see, a lot of collections have been donating their entire collection to the greater good of the public domain for the public to use. There's a lot of resources within this. I wish I could kind of show you a little bit more of this, but once again, I'll try to share this in the chat and we can provide, like I said, this presentation so you'll have access to all of these. Archives.org works very well. Local.gov shares a lot of great documentation, legal precedents, things that we can use photos from. Presidential records. All the photos in the White House are of the public domain. You can use a vast majority of things that are within the White House archive. The national, I believe this is one of the arts institutions, open access policies, thousands upon thousands of famous paintings, images, photographies. The Met Museum allows you open access to use a lot of their photos. They also request how you are to credit them, but you can use that within your work, which is really helpful if you're doing historical documentaries, even scripted historical accounts. It can kind of help create scope and time. MoMA from the UK, there's a huge collection with the Smithsonian. There's a ton of available free images, and including sometimes there's video, a lot of audio, and one of my favorites, there's been few reasons to be able to use this, but NASA images and videos are part of the public domain and can be used in your toolkit to help with that. So what do you want to do? When you are grabbing this, I would document everything. As I've mentioned before, laws and licensees information change constantly. This could change tomorrow. Things are like the Wild West, as mentioned. So at the time that you're using the media, screen grab each license and document the date. It's imperative to keep these records accurate so that they reflect during production, because things could change in the future and you're illustrating your intent was good at the time of production. I also, to make sure that I don't get underwater, I keep an asset list that outlines all of our media so it's easy to find in the future. And I can just go back and look on a project that I did 10 years ago and let people know where I found that image, who authorized it, and what right I had at that time to use it. Okay, moving back into this sphere. Getting creative. I'm sure we've all worked on projects where with unlimited budget, our vision would be actualized. But most of the time, what can you do if you don't have the media asset you need or you can't afford it? There was a 15-second shot that I really, really, really wanted for a documentary that I was working on, and that 15 seconds would have cost $150,000. So that didn't work. Had to get a little creative. So what's always really worked well with me, and we need to make sure that we're giving credit where credit is due and make sure that artists like ourselves are being paid for their work and their craft, but collaborating with local artists, musicians, and creatives are all really incredible ways to not only elevate your project, but get other people passionate and motivated to promote it. Um, Negotiated fees are always great. If it is a passion project, that is great, especially if you can get people to volunteer. However, a lot of us who have worked in the industry, yourself included, and all of the people with their crafts do deserve payment. I think we can all agree with that. So even if it's a small fee, try to work something out. Or you could trade certain things. IMDb credit has worked for me in the past. It's been something that a lot of artists had wanted, and I could provide that to them in lieu of payment. Producer credit. That has been helpful and worked for me as well. I am sad to say that I've not always had projects that had a full budget. Now I operate with that, and I make sure to also create a network of people who have helped me in the past. And when I can bring budgetary compensation, I do. And producer credit is helpful in lieu of that as well. Skill trade. So this is where I was talking about when you do the budget and you don't have the money, do it in hours. So you can do a straight trade. Let's say you're working with a musician who is scoring your project. They need somebody to direct their music video. So you have a direct correlation. This person spent 50 hours on my project. I'm going to spend 50 hours in trade on theirs. So with everything, make sure you have a singular release sign on all of the media and draft a memo of understanding between the parties so there is no open interpretation and that everybody is clear on the compensation or trade. And once again, keep that master list of media with the asset, licensee, owner, usage, release, when the release was obtained, and any notes. And as we all know, systems crash, drives fail. Always print out a hard copy. Always, always print out a hard copy. So things are getting really interesting right now. The future is unwritten. Copyright law, as I mentioned, is in continual flux. So stay updated and aware. And I'm sure this is on the forefront of a lot of our minds. It may seem like a good thing to help us save time, especially when we don't have the budget. And a lot of people are dipping their toe in AI and derivative works. As it stands right now, currently, copyright protection is not granted to works created by artificial intelligence. Does AI itself violate copyright law? We're still trying to navigate that. Generative AI tools can be used to infringe on a copyright owner's exclusive rights by producing derivatives. I'm sure you've seen this before, and there's a lot of legal battlegrounds that have to be tramped upon before we get a clearer picture. We are at the very beginning, I'm assuming, of a lot of different legislation that will probably be coming through. One recent ruling says that anything made by AI aren't considered to have human authorship, and it means that there is currently no legal framework for AI art copyright. And that applies even if humans program the AI or curated the output. So, as mentioned, there are several cases currently in litigation surrounding copyright infringement in AI generation with images, arts, and music. And one in Colorado is a high profile case. He won a state fair competition with an image created by AI, and he claims that he should own the copyright because he used the interface for a certain amount of hours to generate the image. So the question is going to be, who is the author, the user, or the interface? And we still don't know. So my advice is use things when you can, but be very careful. So that kind of concludes a lot of staying prepared. And there we are. That's a little bit better now. To prepare ourselves as we're working on our projects with a lack of resources. Are there any further questions, or do you want to tell me a little bit about your projects that we can help shed some light on? What about, okay, thank you. What about generating an image by AI to inform an artist what you want? That is great, Joe. That is, if you're doing kind of a pilot board or are showing like a screenshots to inspire. I think inspiration boards, I use those all the time. I don't necessarily do shot sheets, but I'll do like an aesthetics board. I think that that's a wonderful way to use AI, and it kind of gives you some inspiration to where you can make it your own and you will own that. So that is a fantastic question and a really great way to use AI to your benefit. Thank you, Freddie. It's been a joy to be here. I really appreciate it. I am available for any questions, any further assistance. I'm super excited once again to hear what you're working on. Big shout out to everyone here at the DCM team. They're amazing, as you all know. And I thank you both. Thank you for the engaging questions. And I appreciate you so much. Have a great rest of your afternoon.